Hello, everybody. We have a
Hey,
very special guest today. I'm your
yes.
host, Edie Arndell, and this is
Um,
my co host, Scott Free, and we
hey,
have Matthew Ho with us today. Thanks for joining us,
yes.
Matthew. How you doing?
Good, good. Thank you for having me join you. I appreciate being on with you.
Yeah, so Matthew spent 10 years in the Marine Corps. He had a very public resignation from the State Department in Afghanistan, if I got that right. And you
Correct.
also are part of the Eisenhower Media. You have an amazing Substack, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
So, yeah, so you were also on Judge Napolitano's today, so that was kind of an interesting conversation. How was that?
Oh, it's great. The judge is absolutely fantastic. He is a wonderful, sincere man. He's not on our side of the line or the
Right.
aisle or whatever, but he really is a wonderful person. And it's one of those things where this is someone who sincerely believes what he believes for good reason, right? Because he has studied politics, he's studied the law, he's studied economics, what have you, and he sincerely believes this and he enters into everything with good faith. So if we were to have a conversation with him, everything I talk to him about is foreign policy.
Mm-hmm.
But if we were talking about economics, we would differ. If we were talking about certain programs, say healthcare, I'm sure he and I have different solutions to the problem that we both identify. And so it's
Mm-hmm.
really nice to be able to be with somebody who is not politically aligned with you, but who you're able to have a conversation with. And of course, on the things that we talk about, foreign policy, I'll kind of contradict myself. That's where we are aligned on that. But no, Judge is great. He's been having me on for well more than a year and a half now, and
Oh, wow.
I'm just very grateful to be on the show. When you consider the other folks he has on there all the time, people like Professor Mearsheimer, Professor Sachs,
Hmm.
Larry Wilkerson, Max Blumenthal, Aaron Mate, Ray McGovern, long list, longer than that. And so I'm just grateful to be able to be on with those guys.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah,
absolutely.
it's a really great show. That's for sure. Scott, did you have something?
Well, I just wanted to bring up the subject that you spoke of today because it was really Judge Napolitano played that clip of Trump's reaction to a question about did they think that the Gaza ceasefire was going to last, and
Mhm.
it was a horrific, scary answer. It truly
Yeah.
was. I mean, absolutely devoid of any humanity for Palestinians. I mean, it was shocking. It made me think of how did this ceasefire happen and what's the agenda behind it? Because it
Right.
certainly wasn't humanity or
No,
a peace
no,
movement.
no. It was definitely a scratch your back, you scratch mine, and I
Yeah,
don't think there was too many sticks involved in the negotiations between Trump's man Steve Witkoff and the Netanyahu government. I think it was probably carrots and promises both ways, and I think Chris Hedges described it best as this was a gift to Trump in the sense of a presidential inauguration bombing pause. And if many people didn't watch the second part of Trump's inauguration, so I think a lot of people watched the actual inauguration in the Capitol Rotunda, and probably a lot of people were surprised that he didn't say much about Palestine or Israel or Gaza.
Hmm.
Basically, it's two or three sentences. He spoke a lot about Panama and other things, but not much about. And so I questioned myself as to whether I was understanding what was occurring correctly. But then I watched the next aspect, the next part of the inauguration, which occurred at the Capital One Arena, where they had the marching bands and everything. And the whole focus of that was Palestine and Israel, very pro-Israel, no mention of the Palestinians whatsoever. And family members of Israeli hostages were brought in with big gold scarves around their necks. And they were brought up on the stage. They all thanked Donald Trump for helping to free their family members. And then they stood there on the stage, and Trump made a speech for 40, 45 minutes with these people as the backdrop, as the props. And even when he went over and did the whole spectacle of I'm going to sign off on some executive orders right now, the people with the gold scarves, these hostage family members, were still standing there. So it was a stunt. It was a PR ploy. And for the Israelis, there are very good operational, strategic, and political reasons why they agreed to a ceasefire at this time. None of it has anything to do, like you said, Scott, about humanity, about stability for the region, about the Palestinians. nothing. It's all about Trump getting something and Netanyahu and the Israelis seeing the ceasefire at this point as being beneficial, again, across all lines, operational, strategic, and political. And we can get into that if you like, but it certainly, it is confusing as to what the Israelis will do going forward. And it certainly is good that there is this pause. About 900 trucks got into Gaza today, about 900 trucks got into Gaza yesterday. On the first day, about 650 trucks got in, right? And the killing still occurring. The Israelis shot dead some people, including a 15-year-old boy in Gaza. It's still occurring, but not anywhere near of what it was like. And so, you know, at least as long as it lasts, there is that absence of terror. There is that absence of destruction and harm occurring, and a chance for people to recover to a degree. But how long it lasts and whether it lasts, I can't say. And what the Israelis want to do, I don't know. And I don't know if they know either, because what's happening and concurrently with the ceasefire are major Israeli operations in the West Bank. Right. And my understanding of this is that the West Bank has always been the Israelis' priority. That's always been, in what military terms what we call the main effort. And everything else, including, God help me for saying this, the genocide was nothing more than a supporting effort to prepare Israel to do the West Bank. And the same can you say Lebanon, Syria, Iran, etc. They had to do all those first. And now that that pressure is off from all those corners, all those sides, all those fronts, they can now concentrate and focus on the West Bank. And is that what they're doing? Are they going to start their annexation now? Is that what we're seeing happening, carried out in the last couple of days? Again, major operations by the Israeli Defense Forces in the West Bank. We don't know. The only thing I do know is or I shouldn't say no, but I doubt very much the Israelis can do both, begin the process of annexation in the West Bank and renew their genocide in Gaza. I don't think they can do both at the same time. Maybe
and then occupy Syria.
And occupy Syria, as well as the ceasefire with Lebanon ends in a week on the 26th. And what happens there? So,
95% of the buildings in Gaza have been flattened, and we don't even know how many people are dead or injured. We have no idea, because there's been no outside verification.
No, they're starting to pull. They're starting to pull bodies out of the rubble. They pulled out on the first day alone. They pulled out 100 bodies in Rafah without much heavy equipment. And you all see it in the videos and the photos, right? Yeah. You know, I saw a video today of them attempting to do that, and there's a bunch of guys with shovels. You know, you're not moving that 1,400-pound slab of concrete that has, 10 other slabs of concrete on top of it with shovels and picks. I mean, and the numbers, the numbers, 80. The one number that sticks with me that I've read in the last couple of days, the Gaza Health Ministry announced 2,200 families have been removed from the records in Gaza. So 2,200 entire families have been exterminated. That they're gone. No one left. They're no longer on the books, no longer in the records or rolls or however you want to describe it. They're gone. The families have been exterminated. 2,200.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Sip Sauce says hello.
Oh, hey Ariel.
Yeah. Thanks for getting our awesome guest, Ariel.
Thank you, Ariel.
I did hear. Now, it's a couple people removed, but from somebody that I trust dearly, from her, my best friend's stepson, said he knows someone that is being deployed to Israel right now. U.S. soldiers are going. I don't know if anyone knows that. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I haven't seen anything. There's a limited amount of American forces in Israel. There's not a need for them. The Israelis really don't want them. The role the Americans that do play there's probably less than 1,000. It's for missile defense. So if that young man or woman is in the Army or the Air Force, that's likely what they're doing as part of the missile defense units that are in Israel. There's some intelligence folks, but for the most part, the Israelis are very, very hands off. They want to do their things on their own. They don't want help. That's just how they are. Certainly, if things were ever changed, they would seek it, and the U.S. would provide it. But there is a small contingent, like I said, less than 1,000.
I was fairly alarmed. I didn't know the details because, like I said, it was like from my friend and from her son-in-law, so I wasn't in the room. Hi, Joe. He says Thomas Jefferson said, "Peace is when everyone stops to reload."
No, that's
Yeah,
unfortunate.
yeah.
Oh no.
Oh, there's no doubt that's what's, a lot of what's going on in Israel is just them
Yeah.
gathering.
Yeah. I mean, just look in the sense of this is why operationally their ceasefire makes sense, right? Because their planes and their drones have been flying nonstop for 15 months. They need time just to do repairs and do maintenance and things like that, and to refit and restock. And if they are going to now start the annexation of the West Bank, they need to move units around, So operationally, it makes a lot of sense because the Israeli army is exhausted, has been exhausted for a long time. This was a big thing of contention over the summer between Netanyahu, his defense minister at that point, Yoav Gallant, and the army chief of staff, Halevel, who just resigned today. Yeah, so but it is there's reasons for the Israelis choosing to do this now, and how they proceed. Like I said, I'm not really sure.
Yeah. I've been reluctant to have any kind of relief. I haven't. I've been. I can't quite get happy about the ceasefire because
Yeah,
I know the bottom's going to fall out at any moment. Like I
Yeah,
just,
right.
I just know.
Oh,
So
and
right.
given our new administration, it all looks completely bad. It's all Zionists in the new world.
And I don't know if you all saw the NBC News report from this weekend, where an anonymous Trump official said that the U.S. is talking about moving Palestinians to someplace like Indonesia,
Oh,
right?
my.
So within the administration, they feel strong enough about it. They're confident enough about it to speak about it to NBC News that this is what we'd like to see. We'd like to see the Palestinians relocated somewhere else. So of course that's ethnic cleansing. That's the whole purpose of it. So was that part of what the deal was between Trump and Netanyahu and getting this deal was, hey, we'll help you get rid of these people, because ultimately that's the problem for the Israelis, is they have no plans for the Palestinians other than those they can kill or force to leave, but no one's going to take them because Egypt and Jordan aren't going to participate in Israel's ethnic cleansing. So they're not going to let those people in. So the great hope among the Israelis is that ocean liners are going to show up and take these people away to Indonesia or to wherever. And if you recall, do you all remember that pier that the U.S. military built in the spring? Well, the story with that is that back in the fall, Netanyahu's government had proposed that to the Americans with the caveat that stuff can come in and people can go out. Right. So that's this fantasy they have, is that, again, these ships are going to take these people away, and they're not going to go away. We've seen that. We've seen all the people returning home in Gaza. We've seen the video the last couple of days, all these people walking through the ruins back to their ruined home, back to where their loved ones are laying on the rubble, as well as to the defiance that we've seen, the videos of Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad, their fighters out on the street with their uniforms on, their rifles, and the way they're being received by the Palestinian people, and that defiance there, and the fact that the Palestinians are declaring the ceasefire deal as a victory. And so that, of course, is upsetting the Israelis greatly, particularly the reactionary religious right. And so you're exactly right, Adi. It's really tough to feel good about this, because you just feel like like you said, you're waiting for the bottom to drop out.
Yeah. I can't quite get my hopes up. And that kind of brings us to the Christian nationalism that we've been talking about, just on full display at the inauguration. By the way, I have not been brave enough to watch any of that yet. Just clips, like I just can't. But and Miriam Adelson is behind the Clintons, unlike so for anyone that thinks that the Democrats aren't part of this, I'm calling bullshit.
Yeah, I think it's important for people to watch at least his half-hour speech. So it's not very long. Yeah. There's the typical Trumpisms in there, not as much as you think, although he did say that God saved him to make America great. So that's a pretty big one, right? That's a pretty big Trumpism. But the usual bluster, he wasn't going on about how I have all the best words, no one has better words than me. He wasn't saying things like that, which he did later at Capital One when he was off script or he didn't have a speech to read. That was more Trumpy than you usually. Yeah. But this, the point is that he made very serious remarks and he described where his government was going and what the priorities were going to be, and clearly stating them. And the fact then, just as important as you were saying, Adi, who was behind him. So of course you have the Bidens, and you have Harris, and you have the former presidents, and then you have Trump's family, and then you have billionaires.
Yes.
Oh,
And that's
yeah.
essentially what you had on the dais behind the podium at the inauguration was family, former president, and billionaires. And
Yeah,
that's
the American aristocracy, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's pretty much what was there, and now they're not even trying to hide it.
No, they're not. They're not. It's
Um,
clear in the open. Yeah. It's the pay to play aspects, the legalized bribery system that our government essentially was clearly on display there.
Yeah, very disturbing. And I will say that I do not want to live in a theocracy. I am not, I mean, it is supposed to be protected in our Constitution that we have freedom of religion as well as all the other things that we're supposed to have freedom of, which are
Right.
getting trampled upon. And, you know, the Constitution is only as good as the enforcement of the laws that are there. And right now they're being shredded.
And it's, I'm worried who's going to tell these people to stop, right? Who's going to tell these people they can't do this?
Right.
Right.
No.
And but I'm reminded that, remember, Trump said back in the first term, his favorite president was Andrew Jackson. And I recall what Jackson said about the Chief Justice, right? When the chief, how about you tell the Chief Justice to come over with his army and tell me what to do, right? Paraphrasing, I didn't get the quote nearly right, but essentially is like, who's going to make me do it? And I was thinking about the other day, maybe it was 2 weeks ago now, whenever Pete Hegseth's confirmation hearing was for the Secretary of Defense, I was listening to a reporter from The Guardian talk about this, and she brought up how on his Instagram page, and this is minor, what I'm going to say now, this is completely minor, but just kind of as an idea of what are we dealing with here. That on his Instagram page, he sells stuff. He sells coffee, and he sells ammunition, and God knows what else, right? And that's all well and good when he is a private citizen, but now that he's going to be the Secretary of Defense, he can't be selling things like that in his official capacity. Who's going to tell him no?
Right.
Well, nobody told him.
Trump was the king of that.
Right. Yeah. Who's going to tell him no? If the general counsel for the Department of Defense comes in and says, Mr. Secretary, you can't be doing this. You can't be, in your public position endorsing a commercial product, on Instagram. You can't do that. Hegseth is just going to ignore him.
Right.
Yeah.
These people don't believe in the rule of law. They don't believe in any of that. And so I'm reminded, I think, when you look at that, who was behind that podium and all of this, what Cornel West said about the United States, that, we live at the intersection of might makes right and greed is good.
Yeah.
And, I think that's what we're dealing with here.
Yeah.
And the pushback from Democrats is not going to be of any substantial pushback, not the stuff that counts. Like they all voted for Marco Rubio.
Yeah, exactly. He got confirmed 99-0.
Sanders voted for Marco Rubio. So it's all downhill from here, as if it wasn't down enough.
It really is. I mean, it's the whole confirmation process itself has been absurd and disgraceful. It's been a sham, right? I mean, so why even have it? And then if you're going to approve somebody like Rubio, whose policies someone like Sanders should detest, right? Then what's the purpose of having even a vote then? Right? Either we're going to go with the president has the prerogative to appoint who they want, which is fine by me. If that's the case, so be it, right? Or we have a system where the Senate confirms the nominees, where the Senate then uses its own decision making in terms of whether somebody joins the government that way, right? We have one or the other, and so it's ridiculous that a guy like Marco Rubio is now the Secretary of State. Yeah.
Well, it's all for show.
It is.
It's
Yeah.
Just
I'll say
as
this
the
sorry,
attendees are a partial cast of the system. The system that is terrified of the Green Party and has been since Ralph ran and drew big crowds. but small to no media coverage. And that's how I discovered the Green Party, was through Ralph. I was, I think he had an article in Rolling Stone in 2000. And everybody knows who Ralph Nader is,
Yeah.
he's the reason for seatbelts, if
Right,
that's
right.
all you know, that's great,
Yeah.
But he was supposed to be on C-SPAN, which I thought was supposed to be very impartial and all about politics. And then they cut away to George W. Bush's workout room, not George W. Bush working out, but his room, to talk about what good shape the president's going to be in. And I'm like, well, while we were waiting for Ralph Nader to come on stage to speak, so they cut away, and I didn't get to hear the speech. So I said, well, now I'm definitely going to vote for him.
Right,
because
right.
he didn't get to speak, so that makes me want to vote for him.
Yeah.
And this is what we need to encourage in people. Like, they tell you no, you need to do it anyway.
Right.
And stop being so scared,
Right.
And
But that
Oh, I was just going to say, and in terms of what Joe brought up about the Democrats, fear of the Green Party, obviously, Matthew, you've had tons of experience with the battles of the Democratic Party in North Carolina.
Yeah, tell us about that.
Yeah. So we had to get on the ballot here as a party, and we needed 13,865 signatures statewide. And so we collected 24,000, I think, or something like that. Turned them in, met all the requirements. And then we got hit with accusations of fraud. We did have an issue where one person, almost one of the things I'll say, since we're on the Green Party podcast, one of the things that we did very well here, and I credit my campaign manager, Rose Roby, totally for this, was we had our own people do the petitioning, right? So for the most part, 97% of the petitions that were collected by our folks, either volunteer or paid. We got money and we paid them as well, because if you're going to ask people to be out there for 6, 7, 8 hours, you need to pay them. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And if you understand, I think people who, you guys just went through this, so you know it better than I do because it's so fresh with you. Right. The idea of, like, you approach petitioning and you think, all right, we'll get some clipboards. We'll go to the farmer's market. It ain't going to be too hard. It's not like that at all. And when you do the math and you come up to, well, on a good day, a good volunteer or a good petitioner is going to get about 10 signatures an hour on a good day. You start doing that math and you look at, like, okay, this is a number of total hours we need to get these signatures. Holy cow.
Yeah.
So you got to have people who are out there committed to it and who want to be there. And then, of course, we have your own people doing it. They're not just collecting signatures, they're canvassing, right? They're getting information. So, and they're giving out information. So it's a great way to do it. What we did, though, towards the end, is we did bring in 3 people who we didn't know to collect signatures. And one of them, at the very end, she tried to get away with, because also, too, the way we worked it out was paid by signature, which is absolutely not the way to do it. But that was, there's a lot of reasons why I'm not going to get into it. But that's not the way to do it. Pay your people by hour. If they don't produce, you just don't have them do it again. It's not that big a deal, But pay by signature, you can run all kinds of problems. We did with this one woman where she submitted a handful of sheets, I think a dozen sheets, that she had just filled out herself. Now, the county where she submitted them didn't accept them, completely invalidated. I'm actually the one who opened the envelope back from the county, because the way it works in North Carolina, we have 100 counties. So you send to the individual county boards of election your signature sheets. So you got 100, right? So that becomes a big logistical effort, right? So the other side of it that people don't, I think, expect is how much on the back end, how much the administrative logistical aspect of collecting these tens of thousands of signatures and then separating them, collating them, getting it to where they need to be. It's a huge, huge effort. Right. And so anyway, I think I was the one who opened the envelope back from Durham County Board of Elections. And with all these sheets, what the heck going on here? So these things were never valid anyway, but they seized upon that. The fact, and that they clearly identified, we spoke to them. Rose had gone and met with the inspector who was in charge of the state board of elections, their chief inspector, whatever. And the guy says to Rose, yeah, there's nothing to worry about. We understand what happened here. And then 2 days later, we go into the hearing to be certified as a party. And that's when the Democrats on the board, there's 3 Democrats, 2 Republicans on the board, no independents, even though independents by far are the biggest block of voters in North Carolina. But it's another issue, right? And they say, we suspect there's fraud. You had these sheets. We think that there might be more. And then, of course, you had the whole aspect of we got then demonized. You had the State Board of Elections spokesperson saying there is a universe of fraud here. We suspect thousands of fraudulent signatures. This is now, they actually said this is a criminal investigation, right? And then to the local media, criminal investigation of fraud by the Green Party. I mean, all that was occurring, you know, and then what happened is we filed a lawsuit in federal court, which the state capitulated and finally put us on the ballot because the court was going to do it, because they had, you know, you read the filings for the state that they put it, and it's clear they don't have anything. There's no evidence of everything. And then when they do certify us at that State Board of Election meeting in August, it's so disgraceful the way they handle it. And Karen Brinson Bell is her name, who was the executive director of the State Board of Elections. She openly lied. She openly lied about us. And then when she got put on the spot and had to certify us, she said she just mumbled something and certified us, and that was it. And then she became, believe it or not, the national director of the Board of Elections club, right? I swear to God, you know, I mean, we got on the
screwed over the Green Party, so you could
Well,
motion,
the thing about this story, though, and there's so many other things I didn't bring in, like
we have time.
The Democratic,
if you want to talk about this
Party
for 30 minutes, go ahead.
So the Democratic Party intervenes, and not the local Democratic Party, not North Carolina Democratic Party. They did, but the DSCC, the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee, was the one who intervened. So Chuck Schumer's organization, and what's his name, the big Democratic attorney. I'm blanking on his name. People know who I'm talking about. He's always on MSNBC and everything, talking about how they're fighting for democracy. I
don't know. I tend to avoid them a little bit.
It was his law. I mean, so essentially we had the most prominent Democratic Party attorney, his firm, fighting this. And when our two attorneys who were in court, one of them, Oliver Hall, who is a fantastic constitutional lawyer, fantastic electoral advocate, big advocate for independence and third parties. We have everything to Oliver, as well as Puyan, a lawyer down here, Puyan Ordabadi. And, you know, when those two, actually Oliver wasn't even in the court, I think it was just Puyan. And Puyan said it was like a scene out of the movie. When the courtroom doors opened and the Democratic Party's lawyers came in, there was like 14 of them, and they had $4,000 suits on, and the sun gleamed off of their freshly shined shoes, and their hair was all slicked back, and it was just like a scene out of a movie, he said. And that's what we were up against. And they did other things as well. They, were calling people and saying that, identifying themselves as being with the Green Party and asking them to remove their signatures from the petition.
Yes.
And unfortunately, our co-chair at the time, Tony Dege, he was, people were calling us saying, hey, why'd you guys call me and ask me to take my signature off the ballot kind of thing, And so Tony was on it, and he missed a call they called him back, and he was able to record it. So we had other people who were recording, and then they started showing up at people's homes. They started showing up at people's homes, not saying they're from the Green Party, but saying they're from the State Board of Elections or from the Secretary of State's office. So falsely identifying themselves as government officials, right? Impersonating government.
Yeah. Right. So who's guilty of fraud?
Right, exactly. And then we brought all of this. We had affidavits, and the State Board of Elections never did anything about it. Now, the issue where this gets turned on its head for the Democrats is what we're having happen right here, right now, with regards to our state Supreme Court race, where Allison Riggs, a Democrat, is up by 700 after after 2 rounds of recounts. And the Republicans are alleging there's 60,000 fraudulent votes. They have no evidence for it, but there's 60,000 fraudulent votes. And to be honest, I haven't seen what's happened in the last week with that. I've been so consumed with Israel, Palestine, and Gaza, everything in Ukraine and everything. I need to check and see if any resolution occurred. But the Democrats are being victimized by the same thing that they try to do to us, which is essentially the same thing that Trump tried to do in 2020, claiming there's fraud. And then when they say, where's the evidence? They say, you have to trust us or believe us, or it's there, or if you don't want to see it, that just means you don't want to see it. If you I mean, like that type of argument, like, yeah, you're the problem because you won't believe me. Not that I'm not providing evidence, it's that you don't trust me. Right. Yeah. So that's what the Democrats are up against, where you've got these Republicans saying there's 60,000 fraudulent votes. There's no evidence of that whatsoever. It's now, and again, I need to look it up because it's probably resolved by now, but the state Supreme Court is controlled by the Republicans here. So, and it's an incredibly partisan, awful system we have here in North Carolina, that there's no respect at all for law, let alone principle. And there's no reason to doubt that the Republicans on that court won't vote the way the party wants them to. And another thing that's crazy here, too, in North Carolina, we have our judges are members of political parties, right? And so it's incredibly partisan on the judicial level.
Yeah.
Wow. And once you throw those allegations out, that depresses the vote for whoever you're accusing. I mean, that happened to Shahid Buttar when he ran against Nancy Pelosi. And then the thing that happened with the Jill Stein campaign in Nevada, I think they collected like 3 times the amount they needed. The local court said it was good, and then it goes to the Nevada Supreme Court, which is Democrats, and they said no, you can't be on the ballot, and they're not able to write in that state. So she just
and the Nevada one was really egregious because Nevada was the state where they have been given the wrong forms by the state.
Right.
That's right.
And the state admitted to giving them the wrong forms, and then the court still ruled against the Green Party.
Yeah.
I mean,
how is that
how
justice?
Is this possible? Yeah. How is that just? How is that right?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it shows that all forms of government are corrupt.
Yeah.
All forms in this country.
What's up, Chibu? Feeling upwards as long as are a stooge for the Democrats and the DNC. Talking about the lady that got promoted.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But that's the Democratic Party in general. Look at the catastrophe of look at Donald Trump. We have Donald Trump because of the Democrats, because they have failed to offer anything to the American people, but also because of their own machinations, right? So you have Hillary Clinton and the DNC doing their Pied Piper strategy of 2016 of trying to ensure Trump becomes the nominee. Then you have, of course, the DNC rigging the primaries in 2016 so that Bernie had no chance. And we all seen the polls over and over again. Bernie would have won that election, you know. I mean, and then 2020, COVID, just everything, anyone should have been able to beat Trump in 2020. And then this past election, but even in 2020, even in 2020, the Dems kept Sanders out, right? They put the thumb.
Do you remember the Shadow app?
Yes, in Iowa, right? Yes, that was in Iowa.
Bernie won Iowa, but then they're like, I remember I was watching Status Quo at the time, and what was the girl on there, Jen something? She's like in the building, and they're watching it come in, and she's like, oh, they're checking for integrity or something on the app,
Yeah,
and then the results got delayed until after New Hampshire went.
Right.
Judge won that because it was up in the air. Because once you establish a role, like once you're the winner, that creates the winning field for the next state. So they robbed him of that and so much more. I mean, in 2016, if he would have walked out of the DNC and said, "I'm going to run as an independent," he would have been our first independent president. I have full faith in that.
I just saw the numbers the other day. He's by far the most popular senator we have in the country. By far the most popular senator in the country.
Is actually sad because he plays their game,
Exactly.
He betrayed the left. He betrayed the left in horrible ways.
Right.
And, he's doing the same game. And this is the day after they lose. Now he's back to, we need a $15 minimum wage. And we need when we witnessed the Democrats just put on that theater of, we can't have a $15 minimum wage because there's a parliamentarian that says no. For one day we have a parliamentarian in our government. Right.
Right. And if they had done the things, if Biden had done half of what he said he was going to do, he didn't do any of it. He did half of what he said he was going to do when they had the Congress. And here's the other thing about it. They're going to blame, it was Joe Manchin. It was Joe Manchin.
He's a Democrat.
You know what Joe Manchin retired as out of the Senate? The chair of the Senate Energy Committee. So you're going to say that this is the man who caused Joe Biden to not be able to fulfill his plans, his platform, everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yet you let him remain as chair of the Energy Committee, right? I mean, like Lyndon Johnson wouldn't have tolerated that. That's for sure, right? You think FDR would have let that guy away? I mean, so there is this type of helplessness that they feign, and they know what they're doing. But you also see, whether it's the minimum wage, the fact that they kicked 25 million people off of Medicaid and didn't think there'd be repercussions for that. I mean, if they had just done anything, the child tax care credit, which everybody thought was terrific, right? Because it was terrific. It's a good thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that was a Democratic Congress that didn't pass it again. Nothing to do with Republicans, all to do with the Democrats. They could have passed that. So anyway, it's, the fact that we have Trump, there's a lot of factors into it. I shouldn't say this one thing, but the role of the Democrats in Trump's success is incredibly, incredibly important.
Well, and it's their failure to deliver anything for the American people. The Democrats get power and they make excuses, just like what you've been saying. We can't do it because the parliamentarian or Joe Manchin or Kirsten Sinema or whatever. So you're bad at your job. Why would anybody want to vote for you? And then you pile on the genocide.
But there's a strategy.
I'm still upset that so many people voted for Dems. I'm trying to be gracious. I understand they were worried about Trump. Well, if they would have just come over and went third party, and all those people that stayed home, 88 million people stayed home that are eligible to vote.
Yeah.
That's half the country.
Yeah, and Harris got 6 million less than Biden got the year before, the cycle before. So where did those 6 million votes go to? We know 3 went. We can say 3 went to Trump because he got about 3 million more than he did, in 2020. And you got to look at Trump though. I mean, to be fair, he got this year 13. I think it was 13 million more votes than he did in 2016. Right. So he progresses his brand in a manner that's the opposite of how the Democrats progress theirs. You're right. Or so as Trump brings people in, the Democrats are repelling people. And, it's this thing for the Greens then is how do we capitalize on that? And how do we, and it's really difficult. It's really difficult because we were talking about this before we went on air. How do you get someone to vote for you if they've never heard of you? Right. Or let alone, how do you get through that wall that encompasses our political system that that is made up of the narratives of you're throwing your vote away. If you don't vote for Harris, you're voting for Trump. All those tropes, all those myth truths, all the scare tactics, that's really tough to get through. And I think too that both the Democrats and Republicans, they don't want to see people voting. They would rather have a depressed turnout than anything. Because what they want, I think, eventually is just get to the point where you can only vote if you can show proof of having a Fox News or MSNBC subscription. That's all they want to have going to the polls or their loyalty.
Poll tax.
Yeah, exactly. Right. How many hours of Rachel Maddow did you watch last year? Okay, you can vote then.
You're 30 minutes short. Go get on your phone or whatever.
Right. So.
Yeah. I was just going to say, we have quite a few people watching, 86 people watching.
Hey everyone.
So we have great content every week. We have a very special guest today.
Yeah.
But if all 86 of you could please like and subscribe, we do this every Tuesday night. And so that's all I got for that.
Support the live stream. Yes.
Please support. And check out the Illinois Green Party. We're doing a lot of stuff here, so we've got lots of plans. Speaking of that, trying to get people on the ballot.
That's what you need to be doing, right?
25,000.
You need to be building out that infrastructure, and that's what we have to be doing: building up the infrastructure that lasts. So that even if you guys, Edie and Scott, you get to the point where you're like, I just can't do this every week. I got to hand a torch off, pass this off to someone else. It's all there. Right. So that the next people who come in aren't rebuilding what's been done before. It's building that infrastructure, that scaffolding, and having an idea of the future. And of course, we always talk about winning, but the reality is that we have to talk about building. And the idea is that we build, and that the idea is we don't worry about numbers right now. We build out. We build out both horizontally and vertically. So we build out the infrastructure, like your show. right? We build out the ability to petition and to canvass like you all did in Illinois this year. That's something that next election cycle you fall back on. But, hopefully hopefully you got it written all down in the binder someplace, step one, right? You're not reinventing it every cycle, but then vertically as well, who do we have filling these positions? Who are our people who are public facing? Who are our people who are staffing us at different levels, nationally, state level, local level, right? We need to have all that. And, the idea being, like I say, if someone comes up to me and talks about, winning in 26 or 28, any independent, not just Green, but social alternative, PSL, libertarians, independents, whoever, my thing is, you got to really be thinking about 36 or 38. Like that's the time frame you want to be looking at, because that's what we have to build out to in order to have the presence to be able to get the type of numbers that are going to sway anything. And that's fine if it takes that long, because why shouldn't it take that long? Look at what we're up against. It's going to take time, and that's okay. We just have to keep building. And then, of course, we'll have victories along the way. We'll get lucky someplace maybe, but the thing is, we want to continue to build talent and keep them. Mm-hmm. So, one of the people I thought most highly of this past year, Chibu, who's one of your folks in Illinois, absolutely loved talking with her. And I hope to God she stays with the Green Party and continues this move, because I see her as someone who 36, we've got this apparatus built around. She gets into Congress, right? Because the work's been done. The infrastructure's there. The money is coming in. And I know, folks, those of us on the left, we don't like to talk about money, but money matters. Anyone who says money doesn't matter, they haven't been there. You can say money doesn't matter until it actually matters, and then it does, right? It's terrible that's the case, but that's the reality of it. Because the thing is, how do you let people know about Chibu? If you could go to an event every day, and Chibu, you could shake. I hope you don't mind me using you like this. Hope you could shake hands with 100 people, 200 people. At the end of the day, there's 750,000 people in her district. Right? Yeah. How do you get her name out, her face, who she is, and what she represents to that many people? Fortunately, we need money, and that's something we have to work on. Now, do we need the billions that the parties have? I don't believe so. But we need enough to go asymmetrically against these guys. And that's the thing that we have to think of, is that we're not prepared, we're not equipped, we don't have the resources to fight them symmetrically, right? To just run headlong into the Leviathan. One of my things that guides me is an episode of South Park from like 20 some odd years ago. And if people remember this episode, the parents at the school are all upset about something. I should look up what it was, but they're all upset about something. And so what they do is they strap themselves into catapults and they fling themselves against the brick wall of the school, right? And so, of course, how do you think, right? They hit the wall, it's splat, and they slide down it, right? So that's always been a guiding thing for me, is like, don't catapult yourself against a brick wall, right? So, you find, so if you're going to run these races like we did, you could say, hey, well, Matt, running in a statewide race when you guys aren't even on the ballot, that's like flinging yourself against a brick wall. But it's not, because we had other goals, right? The idea of winning was never really anything. If someone asks you, you always say, yeah, of course, I can see, but the reality is we had other goals. And some of those goals we achieved, and some we didn't, but the idea is that we were accomplishing something. And this way, one of the things was we got the ballot access line. So this way, Jill was on the ballot this year, as well as our candidates here, and the fact that we were on the ballot and other people got Jill on the ballot throughout the state means that even though Jill didn't get the 2% in this state required to keep her on the ballot, the fact that, because under North Carolina law, you have this other side that you can go into in terms of ballot access, is that if your party is on the ballot of 70% of states nationwide, then you remain on the ballot. And that's what we have, because people did the hard work throughout the country and got Jill on however many ballots, 40 some odd or whatever it was. And that means in North Carolina, we keep our ballot access in the 28 cycle, right? So, there's all these types of things where not only you're building out stuff for yourself, but you're also helping others, So, that's kind of my thoughts on this. If like, look, it's long, it's hard, it's going to cost money, but what's the alternative? What's the alternative?
And I think that, one thing that people don't realize is that, the outsiders who complain, oh, the Green Party, they just show up and run a president every 4 years, not knowing what really goes on.
Right.
And even the complaints about, oh, she only got this many votes and blah, blah, blah. They don't understand. I mean, we see it in the Illinois Green Party. Because of Jill Stein's campaign, the Illinois Green Party is growing dramatically. And I'm sure that's happening in every state. So, and Jill knows that. She knows that's the important thing about her campaign is what it does for the Green Party. It builds the Green Party.
Right. And you guys told me you guys got 31,000 write-in votes in Illinois for Jill. That's amazing. That is an amazing amount of write-in votes. That's incredible. So you build upon that. And I think, I do mainly foreign policy analysis and commentary. I'm not involved with the Green Party formally in any way. You're not, but so I don't really know what's occurring. Yeah. But certainly I hope that you all in Illinois are talking to other folks and saying, this is what worked for us. This is some of the things we did to get that 31,000 votes, just as, folks here in North Carolina should be talking to folks and like, this is how we got, the number of signatures that we got. This is what we did, as, and other things, as well as skills, building out skills. One of the goals we had for my campaign, or I should say our campaign, that Rose and I had, was this idea that we're going to be training people, right? And we did. So at the end of the election, we had a dozen or so people who have been part of a statewide campaign, and they all had done different things, but they learned stuff. We had a handful of people, 4 or 5 people who came out understanding how to do digital advertising, right? Understanding how to advertise on Google or how to advertise on YouTube. Well, you Google, YouTube are the same thing, but you had to advertise on different platforms, right? And how to, right? I mean, so you build that experience, and that really matters. That really matters. And this idea of how do we get the candidates the help that they need so that the candidates aren't doing so much work on their own. I mean, to me, a candidate should only do 2 things, right? They should run their mouth and they should raise money. That's it. That's all the candidate should be doing. Everything else needs to be done by other people because the candidate needs to be that outward focus, right? Telling people who you are, right? What you're trying to accomplish, why they should vote for you, right? And you're doing that in a way much less crass than I just explained it, right? Hopefully doing it a little more politic behind it than what I just explained it. And
I like the direct approach, by the way.
Yeah, the direct approach. Yeah. But then you're raising money as a candidate. Yeah, it's terrible, but that's what you do. I mean, because no one else can really do it. You have people who will, but nothing beats the candidate actually calling, right? The candidate actually being the one who makes the ask. So who's when our candidates are having to design their own graphics, right? And just do all the different things, it becomes a lot. And so it becomes really difficult. And I think a lot of candidates, start out real hot, real inspired, and then they burn out, right? They get to August and they don't have much support. And they're looking ahead to November. I'm like, how am I going to do this? Right? And so, that's sustaining the candidates through. But again, the staff are of equal importance to the candidate, because if you don't have those people that are doing all those vital functions for the campaign, I don't care who you are, right? I don't care who the candidate is. They're not going to go anywhere, right? So if you don't have good campaign staff,
you need money and you need to be able to pay people.
And you need to be able to pay people
to work for you. So in order for the name to get around, you're going to have flyers. You're going to have people out getting signatures for you. You need money for that, all that, and to pay people to be dedicated to calling voters, knocking doors. I mean, there's a lot.
There's
lots of comments here.
I was gonna say there's no sticker shock than going to Staples and getting 1,000 flyers made in color. There's a sticker shock involved with that.
Right.
Kalia Fitzgerald says, much love from North Carolina. Hope you run again in 38.
Be too old.
Michelle, welcome back, Michelle. We need to coordinate green candidates within states as much as possible to build the party across each state and the nation. By the way, we are talking to other states because Illinois is not being held back right now.
Good.
We are like anything we can throw at the wall. We're gonna throw it and see what sticks. Who's going to help us start? 105 people. Let's go. We got 105 people. Please Please like the
Right.
stream because this is a great conversation.
Yeah,
And part of it, I was gonna
check
say, part
out
of it's
the Illinois.
normalizing it, right? Part of it's just normalizing the idea of independent politics of third parties, because that's one of the big things we're up against, right? The narrative. We're a two-party system. Thomas Jefferson said we're a two-party system. No, he didn't. There's nothing in the Constitution about us being a two-party. But if you went out there and asked people, they'd probably be like, oh, no, that's the way the founder, like, even though the founders argued against it and hated parties and everything else, they turned into two parties right away, though, as we all know, right? That happened as soon as Washington retired or Washington stepped down. Boom, there's two parties. So anyway, I mean, I think that's
and he was against it. He said
most of them were against it. Most of them were against it, warned about the dangers of the parties. But certainly Washington strongly did. Yes, Washington absolutely did.
Because they knew what would happen. They would centralize power, and then they would rule instead of being a democracy.
And people need to also learn the history of the success of third parties, which was Abe Lincoln.
Yeah. And the populist parties. I mean, and some of this too is you could take the view as a third party person that your goal is not to win office, it's to enact change. It's to get policies, right? So we go and look at the role of the populists, the socialists, the communists from the 1880s up through the 1930s, the power, the force that they had in American politics, even though they didn't win many seats. They won some, but not a lot. Debs gets 1 million votes sitting in jail or whatever, all these great stories. But the reality was, the big thing was it forced the parties to adopt those policies, right? It forced them, particularly say for like labor issues, to take those on because the populists were going to win otherwise. And so if you're looking back, you say, okay, the populists didn't win in the conventional sense, but they did win. They got the reforms they were looking for, right? And the same thing with the socialists and the communists, right?
And the Women's Party. The Women's Party.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have more comments. So Michelle's asking, how do you find people to start?
Oh, we're here.
Well,
we're here in the Illinois Great Party.
To get enough signatures to be on the ballot, you need probably 250 people in your state, and you start within your state party. You work with them, you contact people, you talk to your friends, your neighbors, your family, whatever you got to do.
And I do think that there's a lot going on. I mean, I was thrilled to watch Jill Stein be able to win over like the YouTube world that I watch. And she did a wonderful job. And Brianna Joy Gray come on board, and Sabby Sabs and RBN and all these places that, I've seen them before and they weren't even thinking Green Party. And then they really came on board because of, they saw in Jill what we need in terms of a future for this country. And so I do think that there is, RBN is one of my favorites, and they talk about organizing all the time and the importance of it. Like they use the Black Panther Party as their example, and how that is something that people are becoming much and much more aware of. And hopefully the Green Party is the electoral arm of that movement, because, the Green Party has the right people. I mean, that's one thing that Edie and I are learning as we're getting more and more involved, is the Green Party are the right people for this. That, we have the 10 key values and we're willing to get out there and fight. And I do think I keep going back to Jill Stein's campaign, that I just think it was such a successful campaign for awareness of independent parties, third parties, the possibilities, I think, are there.
Yeah, what I'm hearing about Jill's campaign was that it certainly, again, they people they brought in and the kind of the skills, the training, the building out, the idea that like numbers weren't very good for this year, certainly less than 2016, say, better than 2020, but less than 2016. And the idea being that that's okay. That's okay, because what we established here, what we got done behind the scenes is going to make a difference for 26, 28, and so forth. Right. And I really do believe that. It's really important. I did see Michelle's follow-up question about finding a campaign manager, a field manager. It's hard. There's not a lot of folks who've done this who are not part of the Democratic Party or the Republican Party. And like everything else, you can't expect to have somebody do it well their first time. You can't expect to have people be successful their second time, right? So for just like candidates have to run multiple times, You know, I was just talking this. Someone brought up Nixon the other day, right? And Nixon loses at the presidential race. He loses as governor, but then he wins, fine, right? I mean, like, you know, I hate that I'm pointing out Nixon, but like,
well,
that,
same
right?
thing happened to Bernie.
Yeah,
well, I was going to bring up
yeah,
the worst example, Joe Biden. Joe Biden had to drop out of the presidency for lying and plagiarism.
Right. I was in high school then. I think that's 88. I think I was like a sophomore in high school. I remember hearing about that. You got to see that, you know, right? Yeah. And so the idea is that we got to have folks who, just like candidates are going to grow, your staff are going to grow. And to have somebody start out as campaign manager when they've never been part of a campaign before, which is how it happens to a lot of folks, that's okay. That's good. That's fantastic that he or she's willing to do that, you know, and then it's just the blows that they're going to take. You've got to have the support that's going to say, hey, you know what? You did really good regardless of what the results were, because this is where we were before and this is where we're here now. Right. And now we just got to keep, you know, and eventually I think in terms of what we should be doing, you know, my recommendations would be that we find people that we can raise the funds for to do this on a professional level. And then they have 3 or 4 campaigns each. So we five or 6 good, solid campaign managers, as well as ancillary staff. And then they provide support nationwide to a handful of races that we think are prominent or very good races, right? It could be for a number of reasons. Maybe it's because they might be successful, or because it's going to be a high profile race, or because we have a really great candidate with name recognition. Beyonce is going to run as a green or something like that, right? You know what I mean? So, you know, I think we think in that way too, of focusing, because when you have limited resources, you have to prioritize, right? We're not like the Dems. What $1.6 billion Harris had, right?
Oh.
Where you could just, and then you end up in debt as well too. So like, right?
That is just ludicrous.
Yeah. So I think that's some of it. Yeah.
Ariel's going to comment. The Mountain Party, the West Virginia Green Party, had an 8.46% increase in party registration. Nice. We didn't get the 5% we needed to celebrate the small wins.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's something, I mean, Scott, if you want to speak to that, we're looking to do in Illinois.
Yeah, no, actually, I mean, right. We are setting up the structures that are going to be necessary to present candidates to be able to get on ballots. In Illinois, we have a pretty unique situation where we can run we can have a petition with 7 candidates that are statewide runs. So Secretary of State, Governor, Lieutenant Governor, U.S. Senate. And so we can put all of those on the same petition. And so what that allows is, you know, we have 7 people who are running their campaigns, and they're all working together to get on the ballot. So that's a big deal for us, in terms where for the Illinois Green Party, ballot access is our number one issue. That's the most difficult thing we have to get through.
Right. I look at a sense of, look, you know, baseball type of reference, you know, look, base hits. Just get base hits. Yeah. You know, I think we've got some people who are too worried about like steals and you know, and things like that, right? You know, too worried about swinging for the fences, too worried about, you know, big play moments, highlight moments, and not enough about just getting the base hits, you know, getting singles. You know, I mean, that's I think what we should be focused on, you know, and again, building up that infrastructure. And, you know, people will come to us because the alternative really is that bad. The thing about it comes back again to the money. How do we get people to know about us? You know, and certainly one of the things to look at, I think, is digital advertising, right? Whether it be on Facebook or Instagram, YouTube, you know, you start your movie on Amazon or HBO or whatever, you get an ad for Chibu right before you start watching it or whatever you watch, you know, right? You know, exactly, like that type of thing, you know, I mean, like, and so one, it's also too normalizing that third party presence, making people feel as if this is something that I can embrace. It's not something that's taboo. It's not something I'm going to be shamed for, right? This is normal. And, you know, it takes a long effort, but, you know, it's necessary, because what's the alternative, you know? And as, you know, like to say, if it doesn't work, right? If it doesn't work, 80 and Scott and the 86 folks who are watching, at least we go down swinging, right? At least we go down swinging.
Oh yeah.
No. So Yeah.
109 right now.
109. Okay.
Please
109.
like the stream. I only see 2 likes. Come on, you guys. At least get us to 50.
Yeah, there you go.
This has been our best live stream ever. So
Well,
Yeah.
fantastic. Great.
And
Keep
thank you, Matthew. Yes, thank you so much.
yeah.
Yeah.
We do have some plans. So we're working hard here in Illinois.
Good.
And we are reaching out to other states. One thing I wanted to ask you, I know this is kind of last minute. I didn't really prep you for this, but I'm wondering about a general strike. I know a lot of people say you need unions, but union density is so small. And
Yeah.
maybe we're kind of thinking about it like targeted, like the way the UAW did.
Yeah.
And Sean
Yeah.
Payne. Stand up strikes, 1 day a month, nobody buy anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I mean, you're going up against a system that has been since during the Second World War. I mean, people go back, look at the number of strikes we had during the Second World War. It's for 80 some odd years now, we've had a political system that has done everything it can to weaken labor. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I live in like the worst state for it. My state, North Carolina, we are perpetually ranked as the worst state for workers. We're also ranked as the best state for businesses. So you see how that works, right? Big shock, right? And so, that's what you're up against. But I think the idea of a general strike is something that's aspirational. And I don't think we should get anyone's hopes up. But we certainly look at the labor movement as it has developed in the last 4 or 5 years, particularly during and since COVID. And we got to build upon that, right? And build upon,
I will say that if I could just add in a comment about BDS, how successful that really has been in terms of, the genocide, the BDS movement. I mean, you see the reports, McDonald's and Starbucks are feeling this.
Right.
They truly are feeling this. And, so there is strength in organizing, getting people to, join in on a campaign. So
right. And with BDS, you could tell it's successful because there's at least 25 states that have anti-BDS legislation, right? I mean, so if it wasn't going to be, now they might have, because that's the way that lobby works, that, anything is a threat to them, but how much resources they put behind it. And certainly it's been successful. It is a model to build upon, and you push forward. And can we do that domestically? Certainly boycotts were successful in the U.S. during the civil rights movement, right? We're right. I mean, so that type of, there are all types of things. The problem is getting people on the same page, because there's been such a focus by our establishment over the last decades, particularly since the television era, to separate us all, right? To individualize us, right? To make everyone removed from their neighbors, from their communities. And it's done in such a way so that we don't bond, right? We don't form communities. We don't stand together. We don't have solidarity. We don't organize. I mean, how many people are out there thinking that it's their fault that they don't have dental insurance? Their fault they don't have health insurance. Right. I heard a story. I forget who was saying this, but somebody said along the lines like, I don't make enough money to deserve dental insurance. Like what? Like what? But that's the mindset of this country. Certainly, that's what's pushed down by our political elites, by our media elites, by our business elites. Certainly, that if you're not doing well, it's your fault. And there's no systemic problems. So the 63% of Americans who are living paycheck to paycheck, including about 50% who are making more than $100,000 a year, it's all because they're buying too many lattes at Starbucks. It's all their own individual bad decisions that are contributing to their problems. Now, you see this with the argument against college, forgiving or eliminating college debt. All those people signed the documents. As an 18-year-old, they signed a usurious agreement, right? How is that right? How is that just? I mean, So.
And there's the angle of, well, I had to pay for mine, so why should somebody else pay for free? There's that that wasn't for me. And the thing that I love to tell them, it's like, so you don't want to invest in our country? You don't want to invest in the education of our country, in our future, in our young people? That's ridiculous.
It's also the same line of
Like you got suckered. You know?
Yeah. I got lead poisoning from the water I drank when I was a kid. Why should it be any different for these kids? You know, I mean, that same type of just, my God, this makes no sense.
You know, one thing that's really fascinating, I did get on Red Note the day it, kind of exploded. And it is fascinating just because there is this communicating happening right now between just Chinese folks and American folks, everyday folks, and just the consciousness that's different. Chinese folks have a class consciousness because of their Communist Party and their revolution of 1948 that we just are so far away from. And, you talk, like you said, we've been propagandized to think it's the individual's fault, it's the individual's fight, and they understand it completely differently. And it is fantastic to see this communication happening that, they say, wait, why do MAGA people hate immigrants? Don't they understand who the real enemy is?
Right.
Real knowledge base of what's happening in America. And it's
fantastic blowback on the whole TikTok thing, right? Absolutely fantastic, right? The fact that Red Note and a couple others, Lemon 8, were the top downloaded apps on like the iPhone store or whatever, was just, but then the fact that, again, you're seeing, right, Scott, all these stories about Americans talking to the Chinese folks and having the type of communication that the folks who want to ban TikTok don't want them having, right? Because that runs counter to the narrative of we're good and they're bad.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's been people now that have admitted that the whole TikTok thing was about young folks talking about Palestine.
Yeah. Well, they had that. There's a great clip, not a great clip. It's horrifying, but it's Mitt Romney and Tony Blinken at the McCain Institute. Of course, it's at the McCain Institute. Makes it even more perfect. Right. And they're having this conversation, and they're so relaxed and they're so candid, and they essentially say that we can't control the information on TikTok, right? I mean, it's and there's other reasons too. One of them is that the American intelligence services can't get into TikTok the way they can get into Facebook and Instagram and X and everything else. And then there's the money as well. Why should these Chinese be cutting in on our market? Right. That's exactly what you look who's standing behind Trump at the inauguration. That's exactly what Musk and Zuckerberg and the guys from Google and everything else are saying. Why should the Chinese be in our market kind of thing? So, I mean, there are multiple reasons. But the main thing I agree, Scott, was because we didn't hear anything about banning TikTok. Right. It wasn't an issue until the genocide occurs and people start talking about the genocide.
They want to control the narrative. They want to keep us from understanding what we're dealing with. And I am glad that it is a little different in China from what I hear. I mean, I don't know specifically that we do constantly criticize our government. So we do have that going for us.
Right.
But it is a class consciousness. Well, we are past an hour though.
That's okay. Well, I just want to make one more comment, please.
Okay.
There was one thing that was discussed that was really interesting because they said, no, come on. Now, we don't believe our government when they tell us that Americans have to pay $1,000 for an ambulance ride. Come on. Isn't that our government propagandized? And we're like, no,
it's
true. That's true. So no, I don't know that there's, they have mistrusted their government, but in this particular case, it was correct.
Right. I don't trust the Chinese government. I don't trust the American government because I know the American government better than I know the Chinese government. I trust it much less than the Chinese government. That's it, but I forget what we were talking about with Judge Knapp a few weeks ago. And I made the comment, like, I don't know how many governments out there don't deserve to be overthrown. It's a and this gets back though to our roots as leftists, though, right? I mean, we're supposed to. You go back and you look at the folks 100 years ago, 150 years ago, what they were trying to accomplish, and it was always came back to a degree of internationalism. That particularly when we look at this in class, we this is where we are together. It has to be. If we don't work with our brothers and sisters in Canada and Mexico, in Japan and China, in France and Ukraine, wherever, we're never going to progress. It has to be that you have to have that internationalism as an aspect to it. It has to be.
Absolutely.
You can't just worry about your own country. And I believe you wrote a Substack about that similarly, that the violence will come home. I've been saying
Oh,
that
it always
for
does.
time.
Yeah, it always does. The violence, it does. The wars overseas reflect your wars at home, but you also have the reality that there's always political consequences for foreign wars overseas. There's
Yeah.
always political consequences. Even if it's just right across your border, there's political consequences.
Yeah.
So, you know, I appreciate you guys having me here, and I appreciate what you guys are doing out there. And yeah, 31,000 write-in votes. That's fantastic.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. And thanks for everybody for watching. 123 people are watching.
Yeah.
right now.
Fantastic.
I hate to cut it off, but you know, you got to be respectful of folks' time. So,
Yeah,
please
I got a
like and
couple old,
subscribe.
I've got a couple older dogs that need to get outside. So
Oh, okay.
yeah. You don't want to
Yeah.
deal with that. So, well, thank you so much. And
Thank you so much, Matthew. It was great.
all right,
having you
thank you
on.
very much, and thanks
I'll
everyone for
play us
watching.
out.
Yeah. All right. Bye, everyone. Yes.
Bye. Oh, if I can find that. There it is.
There we go. Thanks, everyone.
It's an uprising, we're rising up. It's an uprising, we're rising up. It's an uprising.